Hey everyone, this is Bob Mackey, one of the hosts of What a Cartoon, and if you've kept up with recent events, you would definitely agree this is the worst possible time to release an episode about Ren and Stimpy. Unfortunately, we put this one out on Patreon a week ago, so we can't pretend it doesn't exist. That said, just a few days ago, BuzzFeed released an expose as part of the hashtag #MeToo movement that details how Ren and Stimpy co-creator John Kricfalusi preyed upon two women who were minors at the time he initiated these relationships, and things only get worse from there. I don't want to speak for his victims, so I suggest you seek out the BuzzFeed article and read it for yourself. It should be very easy to find at this point. But if listening to a celebration of Ren and Stimpy makes you uncomfortable, we totally understand if you want to skip this episode and save it for another day. I should note, though, that this episode is far from a celebration of John Kricfalusi. If anything, I feel we do a good job at addressing his personal failings, what we knew at the time anyway, as well as detailing how overstated his input was to the show. Ren and Stimpy was good in spite of Kricfalusi, and the fine work his team did following his absence really only proves this. So before I go and let you enjoy this episode, if you choose to enjoy it, I just want to let everyone know that we made the decision to make this episode ad-free to respect John K's victims. Our guest, Thad Komorowski, also wanted me to read a statement about why he didn't cover this aspect of John K's life in his oral history of Ren and Stimpy, since many people have been asking him. And Thad says, quote, "I was interviewed for the BuzzFeed article about John Kricfalusi, but not quoted, which is all to the good, as the brave women should be the focus. I was asked by Ariane Long, and now others, why I didn't cover any of this in the book. Simple. During those days, it was hard to get anyone, male or female, on record to talk about John K in any capacity. Furthermore, it's a history of Ren and Stimpy, not a biography. Books about animation have enough ground to cover because you have to justify why you're writing about the films and the artistic processes and personalities behind them. Books that delve into the filmmakers' lives beyond the work and productions come later. The tragedy of this is, of course, how much these women suffered, and you can bet there are more, but also that a fine team of artists that did excellent work are now blemished by this atrocity. Please remember that animation is the most collaborative of all art forms, and that the images of sad, depressed Ren and Stimpy you're sharing probably weren't drawn by John K anyway." And that was Thad's comment for this episode. So, thanks for sitting through this prologue. I felt it was necessary to do this, and Henry definitely approved of everything I'm saying here. And our apologies for the bad timing. We wanted to roll out this first month of What a Cartoon with some of the biggest cartoons on American television, and unfortunately, we did not see this coming, and we are actually very happy that this news is out now, and these women can share their stories. And again, I recommend you go out and you read that BuzzFeed article if you can handle it. So that being said, please enjoy this episode if and when you choose to listen to it.
Cartoons from present and the past. Every week will be an animated bash. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! Short but mostly shows. We'll talk, we'll analyze, exploring as we go. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon!
Hello everybody, and welcome to What a Cartoon, where we teach your grandmother to suck eggs. I am your host, the repugnant yet delicious Bob Mackey, and this is an audio exploration of every cartoon ever. Who else is here with me today?
Henry Gilbert, and I will make him happy again.
And who do we have coming over Skype?
Hello, this is Thad Komorowski, author of Sick Little Monkeys, the unauthorized Ren and Stimpy story.
That is here for a very important reason, because today's episode is about the Ren and Stimpy episode, Black Hole and Stimpy's Invention.
You sick little monkey!
And this aired on February 23rd, 1992, the 6th episode of Ren and Stimpy to air in, I think, 6 months. Mm-hmm. So I love Thad's book, Sick Little Monkeys. I think I've read it 3 times in the 5 years it's been out, because no one had written any of this stuff down about Ren and Stimpy until you did, Thad. I mean, there were magazine articles, there were interviews, but you made like the definitive Ren and Stimpy oral history, and I imagine you're very proud of that.
To an extent, yes. I can no longer actually watch the show anymore, but
I can imagine that would burn you out, just doing all of that research. Like, your book is exhaustive. You review every episode at the end. You cover things in such great detail. In fact, the Stimpy's Invention chapter of your book, you break down, like, which animator did every scene, which is amazing. Now I could be like, oh, it was, I think, Bob Jake who did the I Must Go Do Nice Things cut, which is amazing. It's so great.
Yeah. That was partly in thanks to Bob, because he had the what they call animator drafts. He saved all that stuff from his studio carbuncle, and it was just who did what on what day and how much they got paid. So,
Wow. He's got receipts, as they say.
Yes.
How much Spumco eventually paid them.
That came a lot later.
Yes, yes. So I do want to go into a brief history of Ren and Stimpy, and I'm glad Thad is here because, again, he wrote the book. I say go out, get it on Kindle, get the paperback version. It is great. If you care about Ren and Stimpy, if this episode gets you fired up to know more about the show, I say it is a must-read, especially if you're an animation fan. And if you're not, I have no idea why you're listening to this show.
I read it as well. It's really great.
It's so good, but I do want to sort of break things down into the history of animation and where Ren and Stimpy falls in, and I'm sure Thad can add his own 2 cents here, but we've talked about this a lot on many podcasts, and I don't want to belabor the point, but cartoons on TV were very bad up until probably the late 80s, early 90s. They were just made to sell toys. They were made as filler. They were made cheaply. They were written by people who did not like cartoons most of the time. But Ren and Stimpy and other programs that started around the same time, the other Nicktoons, later the Cartoon Network cartoons, were creator-driven. They were not created to sell toys. They were created to tell stories, and they were created by artists.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Well, yeah, as a kid, I loved cartoons like He-Man and Transformers and the real Ghostbusters, all of which felt like great shows to me when I was just 6 and would watch any cartoon. But as we came into the 90s, and I think for me, post Roger Rabbit, and there were a lot more specials about Termite Terrace and what real animation was, that it made I started to sour on it just as the new era of cartoon quality was beginning, and I guess 89 or so. I always think of DuckTales as being one of the first real pioneers on that.
Yeah, I think Disney was a pioneer in saying, at least, let's spend a lot of money on this. Let's make this look good and not look cheap, and kind of change the way people perceive television cartoons. But I really want to say that John Kricfalusi, who we'll be talking about a lot, he was one of the pioneers in this artist-driven cartoon movement, working, of course, on such great cartoons as The New Adventures of Mighty Mouse, which is what he did before Ren and Stimpy. So that was sort of the first, let's employ Ralph Bakshi, famous animator Ralph Bakshi, to make a kids cartoon that will eventually be taken off the air for what is perceived as a cocaine reference.
Yeah, that was a weird time. I loved that cartoon when I first saw it, but I loved anything with superheroes. And I would say in Thad's book, I was astounded to learn the stuff about the Tree Weasels episode, which was such just like a middle finger to Ross Bagdasarian and the entire Alvin enterprise.
Yeah, that was specifically written. Well, Bob Jakes came up with the idea. I know John Kay has his own magical version that doesn't involve Bob much, but Bob came up with the version of that story because he got screwed out of a screen credit on the Chipmunk Adventure.
Oh, wow.
And, so that was his response, and he insisted on. Ross and his wife had just had a baby, and I guess this is how the story was told. Their dog got jealous and went and committed suicide by running into the road, getting hit by a truck. I mean, that's the story everyone was told, and Bob insisted on that being part of the cartoon, so that's why there's a flattened dog in that cartoon.
The narrator is a dead dog, and and also all the Cheerios reference too was just hilarious. There's Cheerios in there in the Dave Seville equivalent's mouth the entire cartoon.
I have a very vivid memory of that. This show came on when I was maybe 5, but I have a very vivid memory of that, characters talking with Cheerios in their mouths. Yeah. Just how gross it was. But Thad, I really want to know from your perspective, because you did write the history. Can you talk about the beginning of Spumco, who was the production company that started Ren and Stimpy, and how they eventually created the show and moved to Nickelodeon? Can you give us a little background info on that?
Well, that was always John Kay's intention, was to start a studio to do animation his way, but there was I forget what year, 81, 82, 83, he tried getting something off the ground called Popular Animation. That didn't go anywhere, and a couple of years later, of course, he kept burning bridges, and no one else would ever hire him again, especially after he did a revival of Beanie and Cecil, the great Bob Clampett cartoon of the early 60s. And that crashed after about 3 or 4 episodes, and
sounds familiar.
Then he couldn't get work anymore, and that's sort of how he started. That's how he started Spumco, because he couldn't get work anywhere else, and him and his the quote unquote co-founders. It was at his time his girlfriend Lynn Naylor, who is one of the real unsung heroes of the animation renaissance, especially with TV. I mean, anything to do with modern design and TV animation, it's all some sort of variant on Lynn Naylor's style.
It's so sad that she's left out of all those history. Like, yeah, in your book you mentioned that I think the pilot episode was she put so much work into that kind of went uncredited.
Yeah, to a degree. Yeah, well, Lynn's sort of a soft-spoken person. That's how a lot of animation people really are in general. There's this misconception that a lot of these artists have, raging egos, and a lot of it does come from Ren and Stimpy. But there's a lot of people who are just, they just do their work, and they show it with their work, not with their mouths. Jim Smith would be another person like that, who was also a co-founder of Spumco. And along with Bob Camp, he was the newbie of the group at the time because he was working at Deke and he got a job on Beanie and Cecil.
Yeah, I really want to talk more about John Christopher Lucy, hopefully without committing slander, because he is an instrumental...
There's no such thing as slander when it comes to him.
That's true. It's all true when it comes to John K., whatever you've heard. But I do want to talk about him because I think your book does a good job of showing like the people behind Ren and Stimpy besides him, because he was a big credit hog. I mean, he was the guy who wanted to take all the credit. And the problems with Ren and Stimpy in terms of why he was let go, why he was, basically fired from his own show, was because he was a notorious perfectionist who everything had to go through him and everything had to be perfect before we shipped out the door. And he was also a very, very hard person to work with based on all of the interviews. Every single interview I've read with anyone who's ever worked with him, except for a few sycophants and hangers-on, everyone has said the exact same things about John K. Can you talk a little bit about him and his personality and his history with the show?
He's just one of those classic types in Hollywood. It's my way or no way. And, it's just... I'm trying to think of how to answer this without sounding repetitive. That's why I never really published any of my interviews, because they get really repetitive. It's like you don't need to read 8 times. First John would give us a rough, then we try and do it, and then we do it 40 times, and blah, blah, blah. No, he wanted to do cartoons his way. That was always his driving force in the industry. And, of course, his out of control ego was another factor. I'm pretty sure that's the only reason he's still going today, working on whatever God knows what. I mean, he's allegedly starting another studio in Florida. At age 62, you've got to be a fucking egomaniac if you're going to keep... I mean, at that point,
it's impressive in a way, I would say. But I think too in your book you give credit to. It's not like a hit piece on him. You give credit to John K. where it's due. I think.
For sure,
and John K. I fell into his narrative, which he wanted it to be, which was really easy for me to follow. Of just like, these executives are a-holes and won't let you do anything, and they're destroying creative people, which is, I think, still very true in the animation industry, but. John K. was using that as just protection from him, like, well, no, I'm the artist and they're destroying me. I dislike it even more when it's that kind of thing is used to cover for being a bad person.
Yeah, based on your book, Thad, I think he could not have worked with nicer executives, because you said in your book, like Vanessa Coffey, an executive at Nickelodeon who started the Nicktoons thing, she put her job on the line for Ren and Stimpy. She said, this is going to be a hit and we're going to order 6 episodes, and I guarantee I will risk my job for this show.
That's very true. And the whole, mean hippie ladies, ruin cartoons thing, even to the uninitiated, this just shows how fucking stupid people are. It's like, have you ever watched an episode of Ren and Stimpy? How can you imagine that, they're not being endless battles over content? I mean, the first episode is about eating soiled cat litter. It's like
that's great.
Yeah, it's a pretty good point. Or just Ren and Stimpy got to be so disgusting, and they were also so like it felt like they invented Snick just to give them a place to air the dirty cartoons for kids later. Like they worked a lot harder to make Ren and Stimpy work than any jerky executive needed to do on that show.
Sure, absolutely. That was the thing. That's where the whole mythology doesn't make any sense, because I mean, the main story editor was Will McRobb, who came up with The Adventures of Pete and Pete, as you know. And, it's like, if you ever watch that show, it's just as fucked up as Ren and Stimpy can get.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's like, that guy is not John said a lot of bullshit about him that just isn't true. And, that's his thing. He's a storyteller. That's what he's great at. And, it doesn't matter if it's true, just as long as it's a good story. That people have countered with him. So a couple of the artists I know said, like, John, why'd you write that? That's completely false. It's like, well, it's a good story. It's like,
as long as he's the hero, I guess, of that story too,
or the victim.
Yeah.
Well, so Nicktoons came together as Nickelodeon trying to get into original programming with animation, which for the 80s, pretty much all of Nicktoons programming, at least for me as a person who watched Nickelodeon all the time in the 80s, it was all either Canadian stuff or Canadian dubbed anime. They didn't have much original programming at all. And then Nicktoon comes along in 91, and the advertising for it got me so good. It's like Nickelodeon will have original cartoons, Doug, Rugrats, and Ren and Stimpy. This will be the greatest thing ever when it launches. And I was there day one. I was sending away postcards for sweepstakes to win a t-shirt, and I did win a Doug t-shirt. I got me a Doug t-shirt.
You got the Doug shirt.
Yeah. Well, Doug was my favorite because I was a wimpy loser like Doug. But,
relatable.
Ren and Stimpy is the best of the three.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. And Thad covers in great detail the Spumco split, which happened because, so again, like Thad said, John Kay likes to create his own history. In fact, he did, and then he published it under a pseudonym in a magazine about the true story of how he got screwed and how his, Bob Camp betrayed him and everything like that. But
and you can hire the milkman to do it.
That's right. But there is this narrative, again, pushed by him that, and I've heard it like for the past 20 years, that they fired John Kay and then Ren and Stimpy got bad. And if you truly believe in that, you probably you're only allowed to like 8 Ren and Stimpy episodes, because he was fired in like August 92 or September 92?
September 92, yeah.
Right. Yeah. After
the Snick debut.
Oh, so, that was Snick's debut.
Yeah.
Wow.
Snick debuted in August with the Army Toastman episode, which is one of my favorites.
It's great.
And then Kay was out right after that, I believe, right?
He was out end of September 92. Yeah,
right.
Correct.
And the production difficulties, I think we've covered them briefly in this podcast, but so week 1 of Nicktoons, there was a new Ren and Stimpy. Week 2, it's that same episode of Ren and Stimpy. So they get 4 episodes out, I think, in the first 2 months, one in December and then one in February. And even despite all
actually, sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
That was a misprint in my
the
first edition. It did air. The first 5 aired before the end of September or so.
Wow.
And then, then you waited until what we're talking about, the 6th Lost episode. That's why it was called the Lost episode, because nobody knew where the fuck it was.
That makes things even worse. But despite all of this production difficulty, they still renewed Ren and Stimpy for, I believe, 20 episodes.
Yes, they
for
did.
$40 million, like an untold sum.
It was part of the $40 million deal was for all 3 of the shows.
Ah, okay.
So, of course, Ren and Stimpy was getting most of that.
Well, on MTV, he had never spent that kind of money on original programming before. But Ren and Stimpy, if you kids listening weren't alive then, like, when I was 9, at least, Ren and Stimpy was like an immediate, like, this is the coolest thing ever. This is the coolest thing that's ever happened in animation. It was something that, like, children could watch also with their parents. My mom and dad, but especially my mom, loved Ren and Stimpy. As
my mom did too.
My younger brother, but also, like, stoned teenagers could love it. It would air on MTV and get big ratings too, and it was a huge event at the time. So why wouldn't you pour more money into that? Like, and the merchandising arm of Nickelodeon, like, sucked it up big time.
Oh dear God, yes. But yeah, the whole narrative was, John Kay was fired, then the show got bad. But I think that's doing a great disservice to everything that followed that event. So John Kay was fired for only delivering one episode out of 20 the day it premiered, I believe, and that was Man's Best Friend. And that the content in that episode was declared the reason that he was fired. Honestly, that is not the most disgusting Ren and Stimpy. It's not the most violent Ren and Stimpy, and they did much worse things after that. I think they just wanted a reason to get rid of John Kay.
Yeah, that episode, as Vanessa Coffey has said, she was really uncomfortable with that episode. I mean, she hates George Liquor. She thinks, it's the Nickelodeon executives didn't really get this Hell's Dad's obsession of John Kay's.
Every episode is about an angry dad in some way.
It's really weird because Ren is an angry dad a lot of the times, and then they'll write episodes with an angrier dad to be meaner to Ren.
Yeah, like Anthony's dad.
Oh my God, Anthony's dad.
I love that episode.
Well, that's the thing. Ren's Ren's a little smaller than Stimpy, so it's funny. It's these other characters, these huge characters that tower over Ren and Stimpy. I mean, it's like, and their thinking was, Ren and Stimpy are like the kids. They're little kids, and they're seeing, them getting abused by, this big hulky man.
Giant men in their 50s screaming at them. Like, it is, that's a lot to give to a 8-year-old.
And in many episodes I noticed through watching the series recently, at the end of every episode, they're either killed or they kill themselves. I mean, they're like death is the final thing in almost every Ren and Stimpy cartoon. Some sort of death or finality.
Yeah, that's a good observation because that's something they do not do in animation before or since in TV stuff. I mean, I can't think of. Can you think of a kids show where characters die? That's the end.
in a way, it reminds me of. On the Muppet Show, if they didn't know how to end a scene, they would explode a character or just have them eaten. They'd be like, well, that'll end this sketch. And I wonder if that, to a degree, is why they just would paint themselves into a corner every time with Ren and Stimpy. And then they'd have to just go like, kaboom, it's over. We're done.
Right.
So my experience with the so there's the Spumco era of Ren and Stimpy and the games animation era of Ren and Stimpy. That was run by Bob Camp, sort of the co-creator of the show, the games era. My perception as a kid was, Ren's voice is different all of a sudden. It's not as good. And then Ren's voice improved, and then I was like, no, I still like the show. And then I only found out later, much later, that, there was a big change up behind the scenes, and, the creator's not on board anymore. But I still like the show a lot after John Kay left. I still stand by a lot of the game's episodes. And I feel like the biggest shame of John Kay leaving is I feel like the best episodes of Ren and Stimpy are the ones that Spumco started and games finish. Like, they were able to do much greater work with the input John Kay gave them while he wasn't there.
I would agree with that to a degree. I think my original impression was on them was kind of done via. I was hurt by John Kay's storytelling. I just heard through the grapevine, they fired John Kay, thus meaning the show is less authentic to me. And definitely I could tell. I even at that age I had an ear for I know this is Billy West doing Ren. It's not whoever did Ren before. But I think the only problem I had with the games era is that I felt like they got even grosser, and I have kind of a weak stomach for gross out humor, and it a little say when they're selling Stimpy's hairballs and he has to lick clean a lummox of hair.
Yeah.
Just like this is pretty gross. I'm pretty disgusted here.
They really traded the whole psychodrama element for gross out humor and slapstick. So there were less episodes about a person slowly going insane and more episodes about living inside of a whale and things like that. So how do you feel about the game's animation episodes, especially the later ones? Because I really love episodes like Doubleheader, Ren's Bitter Half, Insomniac Ren. There's a lot of really, really good ones that were made completely with nothing to do with John Kay.
That's another good observation you made, trading the psychodrama for grossness. That's really true. There was a mandate early on in games history where they said we're not going to do any more of these psychodrama pieces. Because okay, well, boogers and shit and semen are okay, but as long as we don't have to deal with the mental problems in and around the show,
yes.
It's like, well, there was still a lot of screaming going on after John Kay left. There was a lot of drama after, within the production, but ultimately, at the end of the day, these guys knew they had a job. So,
one of my favorite psychodrama episodes post John Kay was the one where Stimpy wakes up one morning and realizes he doesn't wear clothes and feels naked all the time. And they're like, no, you never wear clothes. And he then is like cast outside naked. And he's like, why are you doing this to me? Please don't do this.
I really love, we're giving out recommendations. I'm sure Thad has his own, but I also love I Was a Teenage Stimpy, where Stimpy goes through puberty. And at the end, he turns into Superman and flies into the sun. So again, another episode where a character just dies at the end. Thad, do you have any favorites from the game's animation era? Because I'm sure this will send our listeners out running to watch them because they might not be familiar with these later ones.
Yeah, I would recommend any that are directed by Mike Kim or Chris Riccardi, because those were basically the two superstars of the layout and storyboard artists. So those are the best ones after John K. left, probably. Those would be Doubleheader, Ren's Bitter Half, Ren's Brain, and Tom McGrath, who's a big shot at DreamWorks now. I Was a Teenage Stimpy was his directorial debut.
Awesome.
So,
wow.
And also Reverend Jack.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, now, you need a decoder to understand that episode, what everything is a metaphor for.
Sure.
But it's great.
I did an article called Cartoon Beefs that happened in the cartoons, and both that one and the Tree Weasels episode were in there, as was the Simpsons multiple shots at Ren and Stimpy as well, which I wanted to get into that a little bit, Thad, that John K. definitely attacked the Simpsons and other script-driven cartoons, and he was definitely evangelizing story. It starts on the board and writers draw. And I do kind of agree with that. I mean, I would say to a degree, he's got his wish. Many shows on both Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network are very board driven, like Adventure Time, Steven Universe, OKKO, just to name a few of them. So I don't know. He should take some pride in that, I suppose.
Well, it's all about the best method. I mean, he was trying to revitalize the Warner Brothers cartoons, and board driven is the way to go with that. But it just depends on what you're trying to do, because script driven obviously worked for other shows. So it's not an either or thing.
Yeah, I would say it's just that it was more so that nobody was getting to that stuff. I know.
Exactly.
I believe I recall John Kay had the quote of saying, he said that if there was a new Chuck Jones, they'd give that person the power for a storyboard driven show, but there's no new Chuck Jones. And he said his counter to that was, well, there never will be a new Chuck Jones if you don't give somebody a shot. And I know in that version of the metaphor, he is the Chuck Jones genius, and he's aggrandizing himself in that. But I do agree with that sentiment.
It drove me crazy though, when John Kay would be very, very loud about how bad TV cartoons are, but then he would evangelize for script-driven stuff like Beavis and Butthead. It made no sense to me. I mean, Beavis and Butthead was created by an artist, but it is a script-driven show.
That's got a lot of people. No one knows where the fuck that came from. I think Mike Judge has done a lot of John K. dick sucking over the years, so
yeah,
that's probably got a lot to do with it.
I mean, he did do a Hank Hill short with, I believe, was George Licker in that?
Yes.
Okay. Probably. I don't know if Mike Pataki, he's dead now. I don't know who did his voice, or maybe somebody else.
John did.
Oh, okay.
He's just fully become George Licker now. His dream has come true. So about this episode, they advertised this so heavily as the lost episode that I could not have been more hyper for it as a 9-year-old. I was it's the lost episode. I haven't seen a new Ren and Stimpy in so long, and these commercials look so great. And it would end up being my favorite episode I probably ever saw. Maybe Powder Toast Man, just because I love Gary Owens' voice. I love comic book stuff. And I love them burning the Bill of Rights at the end. Those are all beautiful moments. But
that is great.
But Stimpy's Invention, I think, is my favorite.
And I think the production difficulties, as bad as they were for Nickelodeon, having a Ren and Stimpy famine for months, and then one of the best episodes of all time. I think the first 5 episodes made the show explode for sure. I mean, there was merchandise immediately, but this episode I feel was the real turning point for everyone being turned on to Ren and Stimpy. I mean, especially because there's a song in it that everybody was singing after the episode. Yeah,
that's absolutely true. There was a lot of it was heavily hyped, and then the ratings exploded for it. I mean, this was the episode that John Kay took into his office and wouldn't let anyone in. when he was working on it. So
For sure.
Yeah, production-wise, what made it take so long? Was it just that John Kay had to redraw everything or just go over everything?
Well, he's got a fanciful story about, well, they didn't want to do it. I had to get down on my knees and beg them to do it, but that's not really true. If they didn't want to do it, they wouldn't have done it, point blank. Mm-hmm. It was just him obsessing over every single drawing, every painting, every frame. It took that long. I mean, part of the thing with the mythology of Ren and Stimpy is, the shows really did need more time than the average TV cartoon production because, you look at Doug, it's like, that's pretty minimal.
I love that Doug is a slur in this episode. Like, Doug.
That 4-letter word.
Yeah. Well, you know what I'm saying. It's not full animation.
Yeah,
well,
right.
Neither is Ren and Stimpy, but they needed more time to do it, but not that much more time.
That's funny.
So.
We're talking about Doug so much, Thad, because they did layouts on 2 episodes of Doug, or storyboards on 2 episodes of Doug.
They did boards on that. I forget it was board or layout, but they just shit it out.
Yeah,
so.
They needed work.
I don't know which episodes they are. If somebody knows which ones they are, let us know.
It's the one where Porkchop has a nervous breakdown and
yeah, exactly.
kills Doug. So we go through the entire episode normally, and will be no different. There is stuff surrounding Stimpy's invention that I think Stimpy's invention just sort of like cast a shadow over, because Black Hole is okay, and there are 2 shorts, one of which is completely reused and one of which is like half of a new short, but they have to lay a lot of road to work towards this cartoon they've been working on for a year.
Mm-hmm. Well, because it was an irregular length as well, so they just made Black Hole a lot shorter and then just, I think, filled it in. That was something, especially in season 1, that they just had a lot of sequences they'd reuse, like Powdered Toast Man commercial, Ask Dr. Stupid, that could just go in a spot if they were short on time, which is kind of a format that I've been rewatching a lot of Dexter's Lab.
Yeah.
And I forgot how much they did that too, of, okay, this is a fun short, but it was 10 minutes instead of 9 or whatever. So now it's time for the Justice Fruit Pies bit again.
Well, Gandhi Tartakovsky's a real acolyte of John Kay's, so that's probably some carryover. So
we just did a Dexter's Lab episode not too long ago, and
The
rewatching
listeners
it.
haven't heard it yet.
Yes, you'll hear it soon. But
okay.
We realized there's a very Ren and Stimpy dynamic happening between Dee Dee and Dexter. There is a small, angry, foreign person yelling at a larger, dumber thing. So,
well, Dexter is Ren. It's the same fucking voice.
That's very true.
Well, I guess it was hard. I never noticed that because Cow and Chicken is such like a straight ripoff of Ren and Stimpy that I didn't notice the Dexter similarities as much.
To a degree, yeah, it is, but. David Feast has got his own style. I mean, Feast can at least actually do all of this stuff, whereas John's got to scream at other people to do stuff he can't do. So
he draws better butts on his characters.
Constantly.
Yes.
And the less said about Schnookums and Meat, the better. That was Disney's Ren and Stimpy ripoff. Yes, Disney made their own Ren and Stimpy ripoff. That's how big the show was. Yep. So let's get started with Black Hole. One thing I wanted to ask that is that there is no director credit, although this is directed by Bob Camp and John Kay. Is there a reason they took their names off of this? Were they not happy with it?
It was just undirected. That was John Kay's call. He didn't want anyone to have credit.
Oh, weird.
It's odd. What an odd call.
Yes, and we will have clips throughout the show as we normally do, but a lot of this, it's Ren and Stimpy. A lot of it is very visual. There will be less clips, but the clips will be longer in general because there's a lot of ranting and a lot of screaming.
I honestly had no memory of Black Hole when it went into my black hole of memory. But I remembered Space Madness because that's such a better short than this one. This Black Hole is not bad, but it's just a lot of goofy drawings with no real center to it at all.
It's a bunch of blackout gags. Like they look different in this scene. Now they look different in this scene. It's just, I mean, it's very visually inventive, but there's no real point to it. And in the end, they kill themselves.
Yep.
So let's hear the captain's log starting off this episode.
Captain's log. Emergency report. We are fast being sucked into the hideous vortex of a black hole. Our rocket engines are useless. We are trying everything, even manual override. But to no avail. Our shipboard computer suggests one last alternative.
So the start screaming sign comes on, and I believe they then do a gag that's reused from Space Madness, the prolonged screaming as something is happening to the ship. Is that from Space Madness?
I don't believe so.
Or
I think
Maroon?
that's just some new footage.
Okay, I just remember a lot of screaming in one of those space cartoons.
Screaming will fill time
Yeah.
for sure. This episode, Black Hole has multiple giant fingers in this. My favorite is the breaking of the giant finger pressing the button and then it just drooping down flaccidly. I hate to use. Well, I mean, look, it is supposed to look like a dick.
Yeah.
That's the joke.
Yeah.
But who was the master of the giant fingers at Spumco? Was it Bob Camp?
It was a mix of all of them. They stole it from Chuck Jones, so it's just
Steal from the best, man.
This episode really made me think of Porky and Wacky Land. I don't know if anyone else got those vibes, just like random things flying through the background and just like a world that's kind of threatening but also silly at the same time.
Yeah, once they land and they walk through the wacky background of weird-looking things, including the eye on the pedestal, that one especially is a very like wacky land moment for me. Or,
For sure.
Or say when Popeye lands in the world of the goons and he's like, "What a bunch of weirdos!" It felt.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if they were going for that, but I got serious vibes from those cartoons. And I don't want to just recite the list of visual gags, but this is basically a bunch of visual gags. They were completely unaffected by the journey. They cut back to Ren and Stimpy wearing tighty whities for some reason. Stimpy splits up to look around. He literally splits himself in half, and then he has to eat one of the other Stimpies in order to go back to normal.
I love the reaction on the other Stimpy of like, well, I guess I must die. Like, they're the same Stimpy. They both have the right to exist, but
He just gleefully climbs in his mouth.
Ren orders him to die, and he just eats him and does it. I do love the line of Ren saying, like, flesh and blood, not wax.
Yes,
It's-
not wax. Yes, so this is a very short cartoon, actually. After a bunch of visual gags, Stimpy says aye and grows a giant eye. Ren and Stimpy have giant fly heads. They discover the repugnant yet delicious aroma of the sock mountain.
Why, it's nothing but a mountain of stinky old gym socks.
It's my missing left sock. I've been looking for this everywhere. I've got one just like it at home. We cats love stinky socks.
Left sock. Left sock? That's it! These are all left socks. This is where all the missing left socks in the universe go.
General Hulk, for retrieving all the world's lost left socks, we give you $1 million and the Nobel Peace Prize!
So that's the best joke in this episode, I feel, because whenever a sock goes missing, I think of it's probably on the mountain of left socks.
I forgot that joke. I was sure it was just going to be like another shit joke or just that it was going to be a giant cat litter box, because I really loved cat litter box jokes in the first season. They were big fans of that. But so I forgot the cleverness of the missing left sock. So you get a gross joke, but also just a fun, almost, I guess, it reminds me of comedians saying like, why do they make the whole ship out of the black box? Same thing of like, what happened to that stuff? I think my favorite weird drawing in the episode is when they have giant heads, because when I think of people getting high and watching Ren and Stimpy, I think of that shot. I'm like, oh yeah, that's people being high watching.
They drew that to freak out stoners. So
Bob Camp probably drew that while he was stoned. Who knows?
That's very true. So they find out for some reason they have 5 minutes to make it to the nearest transdimensional gateway. The space thingy is telling them that.
I love that whenever they need a new plot point, Stimpy just pulls out his space thing. He's like, oh, we actually have to go to a different place now.
And they make it on to the bus out of the black hole.
Get it, Stimpy! We made it! We're home free! Hey, Mr. Bus Driver, 2 tickets, please.
Can't you read? Exact change only!
Now what do we do?
Well, we'll probably continue to mutate. Then our very molecules will more than likely begin to break up. I'm sure our atoms will disperse slowly throughout the universe. I guess it's hopeless.
Wait, I have an idea. I'll set the space-time thingy to our molecular wavelengths, switch her into reverse, and turn it up to full blast. and we'll simply implode.
And Ren is a layman. He does not understand the word implode, so Stimpy sucks in his stomach to show him, and at this point, they gleefully kill themselves.
One of my favorite gags in the show is when Ren describes something at length to Stimpy, and then you just see Stimpy reacting like, what?
Yeah.
What? And Billy West is totally there for it, too. Like, it's I can't imagine the show working with anybody but Billy West as the main voice actor on it, because they needed, if they wanted to be the next Chuck Jones, and they did need a Mel Blanc type guy for that. And it was smart of them to get a dude from radio, though speaking of people who have not great opinions on John Kay, like Billy West was tortured making this show.
Yeah. It's great to hear quotes from him. It's like, you have not been through what I've been through. You do not scare me, John Kay. And if you read about what Billy West has been through, he's right. Yeah. He's absolutely right.
John Kay can't be as abusive as his father, as Billy West's father.
But that the bus driver we heard was Harris Pete, I believe his name is. Is that correct, Thad? Is he a voice actor or just a friend?
He was a voice artist. It's funny, when they were doing some things for Nick Splat or whatever, the nostalgia thing, they found Harris Pete, and he was on the couch there with Vanessa Coffey and Billy West. I was like, shit, he's still around.
Wow.
I don't know what he does, or other than he was Muddy Mud Skipper. So
his voice is awesome.
Yeah. I wish we got to see the full thing of the bus driver, because I think he would be a lummox. Like, he is officially a lummox. One other cartoony thing I liked in this episode was when they got to the mountain and they revealed what it was. It had the very specific B-O foghorn on it. I did love that.
That's a great classic callback to Warner Brothers stuff. So up next, like I said before, they gleefully kill themselves.
Stimpy, I can always count on you when the chips are down. Let's do it.
Well, there you have it. In just 5 seconds, we implode.
Been nice knowing you, buddy. You're a good kid.
See you around, pal. Memories.
Oh, silly me. I had a whole pocket full of change all the time.
Kinda ironic, huh, Ren?
And so they kill themselves for no reason. It's very nihilistic, like a lot of Ren and Stimpy endings.
Yeah, it reminds me a little of Rocky and Bullwinkle cartoons too. Like, especially that reading is a very Bullwinkle reading, like kind of ironic, isn't it, right?
Yeah, it's something like I said before. You just don't see that anymore. Like with these ironic endings, with the characters dying. It's something they got away with pretty often on the show.
They really did.
And not just like falling to your death dying, but suicide. A chosen suicide. They're like, we're going to die. I choose to.
Being excited about it, then being like, sort of like sharing the moment together happily.
And I do, I also did like that they drew a different imploded version of the eye catch after that. I did like that. There's something about the way Stimpy's noseless face looks, the little X where his nose is, that is very fascinating to me. I think it was in multiple video games too. But then after that we get my mom's favorite jokes she loved seeing Log every time, even if it was the same cartoon, because my mom was a child of the 60s like the creators of the show. And so any Slinky or Barbie reference to those very specific commercials she loved.
Hey, Betty, guess what I got? Jamie, you don't mean yes! New high-fashion log for girls!
Yes, all new high-fashion log for girls!
Why, she's beautiful! Uh-huh, and just look at all these high-fashion outfits and accessories! I'm gonna dress her up like a bride!
Yes, girls have endless hours of fun playing dress-up with new high-fashion log! And don't forget Dream Date Log!
Isn't it romantic?
Girls just love high-fashion log!
And then the log song pads out some time. The visual is little girls nailing tiny dresses to logs.
Yes.
Right.
And the Billy West really gets that announcer voice perfectly, too.
Yeah.
Almost too excited. Yes, all new about the log.
The log ones always felt a little different to me, especially the announcer at the end who says from Blammo like that. I don't think that's a voice you hear basically anywhere else on Ren and Stimpy. Where's that from, Thad?
I'm not sure, to tell you the truth. They were just making fun of the ridiculousness of advertising and the really poor reads that often went in the voiceovers for those ads. Just screaming the wrong word, giving the wrong accent at the wrong place. You heard it all over that blog for girls just now.
Oh, it's perfect.
Happy, happy, joy, joy, 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 joy.
I don't think you're happy enough. That's right. I'll teach you to be happy. I'll teach your grandmother to suck eggs. Now, boys and girls, let's try it again.
Happy, happy, joy, joy, 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 joy.
I guess then we are finally at the main event.
Yes, Stimpy's Invention, finally. So again, read Thad's book. It's so great. I just read the entire chapter on this before I sat down to record. And just some brief details about this episode. This is Bob Camp's idea, Stimpy's Invention, but John Kay gave it a bit more focus. It was originally going to be like a bunch of blackout gags where Ren went through a series of inventions, but John Kay was like, no, let's make it have a point. Let's make it about Ren being angry and Stimpy trying to fix that. So this is really the brainchild of Bob Camp, who actually boarded the entire cartoon. And reading in your book that, it amazed me that someone compared him to Hayao Miyazaki, because it's like, if you look at Bob Camp's boards, that is the finished cartoon. He directs the cartoon in the boards. They're that detailed and that specific.
Yeah, that was Jim Gomez. He saw Bob board that cartoon, so yeah, it is a fact. Yeah. Bob sort of brought back the system, and this goes into the second season, where they do most of the direction in the board. So then it can go straight to layout from that. That doesn't really work for a lot of productions, but because Bob's are so detailed and, perfect, they could just be blown up and used as the layouts anyway, which is what they do in a lot of productions, but it doesn't really work, like I said. But Camp's are pretty perfect because he's just that good of a draftsman. Mm-hmm. So.
And would you say this episode came out so well because they sent it to Canada, Carbuncle Studios, and not another place?
Absolutely, yeah, no question. All the best Ren and Stimpys were animated by Carbuncle. That's Bob Jakes and Kelly Armstrong's studio in Vancouver. They did. I mean, if you look at the list, it's this, Stimpy's Invention, Space Madness, Son of Stimpy.
Did they do Kilted Yaxman as well?
Kilted Yaxman, yes. Sven Hoek. I'm trying to think if there was another one.
Those are
they
all
did
my
Part
favorites.
of Fire Dogs.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, but it's like all the best moments are, it's something Bob Camp said to me years ago. All the animation that John Kay holds up as the basis of his genius, that's all Bob Jakes' animation.
Wow.
So,
those wonderful Canadians.
Or under his direction. So.
Right. So this episode had some big production problems because of John Kay's perfectionism, also because of overseas studios. So by February of 1991, before the show even premiered, Ren and Stimpy, it was fully written and boarded. It would not be ready, obviously, for another full year. And I believe by October 1991, it still wasn't fully animated. So after the premiere of Ren and Stimpy, like a month after, actually more than a month after, there was still 2 months, yes, there was still no Stimpy's Invention. And I believe the ink and paint was done in the Philippines while, the animation was done in America. And I forget who went over there, but they basically had to retrain everybody who fell into bad habits from working on bad animation to actually learn how to animate this cartoon correctly.
That was Bob Jakes. He went over there as a special favor because he saw how shitty the animation was turning out, even from Carbuncle once it went through the ink and paint in the Philippines. So he went there. Almost died doing it, but but he salvaged it. And John Kay was still trying to get him. Hey, why don't you animate a couple more scenes for this? It's like, yeah, go fuck yourself.
I do feel bad to a degree for the overseas animators on this stuff because they didn't know any better. They had been animating bad things, so they had no expectation of them. Like a good He-Man cartoon or a bad one is almost imperceptible. Like
Sure.
the level of animation quality is pretty much the same.
Yeah, like a Care Bear has three possible expressions, and you have to know how to draw all three of those. It's much different than Ren and Stimpy.
Or Popeye and Son, or I could name bad 80s cartoons all day, and I've watched every episode of all of them.
Me too. But I do want that to talk about the whole gift box story. I found that fascinating in a study of John K's madness.
Well, that was Teal Wang's story. She was the color key stylist for the show. She designed all the color for the props and the characters and that and so forth. There's a gift box in the episode that Stimpy gives Ren. Here, Ren, for you. She basically painted that box over and over for a whole month until, her whole office was just full of just that one box. She just couldn't get it right for John. Oh. And then finally he picked one, and it was the first one she ever did. So
that borders on emotional terrorism, I have to say.
It is emotional terrorism. It's sadism.
Yeah.
And I mean, John K was kind of emotionally abusive to a lot of his employees, but I have to wonder if he was extra abusive towards women, because based on what I've read in your book and from interviews and stuff, like he's not a great guy around women. In fact, I believe he fired Chris Riccardi from the show because Chris started dating Lynn Naylor.
Yes. Yeah. That's a fact. That is a fact.
Yeah, these are all facts.
Yeah,
we're not going to jail.
True facts stated here.
Yeah.
That's God. Well, wasn't this is derailing slightly from Stimpy's Invention, but wasn't another of the sadistic things he did was he just made everybody redraw a Yogi Bear cartoon to learn something?
That was on Beanie and Cecil. He had them redraw Beanie and Cecil comics from the 60s.
And then they'd finally really understand Beanie and Cecil at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
That's another, Beanie and Cecil's fine. We are getting off subject, but what terrorizes me about John K is I understand liking the designs in Hanna-Barbera cartoons, but he seems obsessed with cartoons I view as objectively bad and not written well. Like
the one with they turned it into that. They just took that Yogi Bear pie one and then they just made that into their own thing. I'm like, this Yogi Bear is no better than any other Yogi Bear, which is not good.
And I apologize to the one listener who always gets mad when we make fun of Hanna-Barbera, but I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. So let's start talking about Stimpy's invention. So this sets up the entire cartoon. Stimpy is trying out a series of inventions on Ren.
Hey, Ren! What? Will you help me try out my new inventions?
Go away. I'm busy.
Come on, Ren. I need your help.
Oh, please! Huh? All right. Sure.
So we have a few inventions to go through before the happy helmets.
I love the needle. I forgot how much I love the needle drop music on it. It's like all just the stuff pulled out of a library somewhere.
Yeah. And it's great how this is the last song you hear in the episode, and it's the first song you hear in the episode. It sort of represents the status quo of Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah. Though now if I'm looking at the metatextual message of this episode, and we are talking about the production on this, I can't help but see that Stimpy constantly trying to show off new things to Ren that is then rejected is seen in the work ethic in Spumco. Like, these were people working through, Stimpy is an artist at Spumco showing something to Ren, who is John K, and then he rejects it and is like, this is the stupidest thing ever.
Well, they did that pretty explicitly after he left in Stimpy's cartoon show. So.
Yes, I love that one.
He's even wearing John K's glasses in that episode. I believe it's a real story where he came into a room and just started ripping all the boards off the wall.
One of the weirdest things ever is listening to the commentary on that episode with John K on the DVDs. I don't think I'd ever do it more than once. It just made me cringe so much hearing it.
It's awful because it's like, why did you get this guy to do commentary for cartoons he didn't work on that he hates?
Yes. He'll just say you can tell how ugly that is. They just drew it straight from the board, man. Ugh.
And it's funny when I believe Bill Ray, who was the background artist on a lot of episodes, when he did a commentary with John, he had to be like, come on, John, let's calm down a little bit. Some of this is good. I worked on some of this.
Well, so we don't even get to see how the Cheezo phone works. I'm kind of mad at Ren for not trying to use it. He just throws cheese at him. Though the way that phone bounces across is such great animation.
It's really great. So yes,
it's a cheese joke. It just came on Stimpy's face.
No!
Everything that hits a face is a bodily fluid in some way.
Damn it! Why did I never realize that? You've ruined my innocence now.
I didn't get all the clips for this, but I love finish my paper. It's like his face pops into almost like a clenched jaw.
He's so big.
So the next invention is the remote shaver. I don't know how it works, but he does shave Ren through this invisible technology, and Ren is not happy. But the final gift before the happy helmet is the Stay Put socks, and we have a clip of this.
Here, Ren, for you.
Oh, what is it?
Go ahead, open it.
What are they?
They're my latest invention. Stay put socks. They never fall down.
Say, now that's a good idea. Especially for those of us who don't wear clothes. Why, it's amazing. How do they work?
They're full of glue. I'm so glad you like them, Ren. Wait here. I'll go get the stay put hat and raincoat.
You filthy swine! I will kill you!
So Ren cannot escape. I do love, even 25 years later, having a cartoon character say, I will kill you.
Yes. There's, I will kill you.
Yeah.
You never hear stuff like that in cartoons back then. It was... It even now you don't. I mean, I don't know. Nobody as a joke gets to say "I will kill you" in a kids' cartoon.
We
in America.
can't. I work in I work on a lot of Disney comics, and we cannot have like Donald scream at one of his cousins or nephews. I'm going to kill you, and like I would love to have him say it, but we just can't. We don't even try.
I love that animation on Ren.
It's like
he's like
flailing.
a dead bug. He's just like, please. He's just his flailing, his anger, but he's also his weak anger too. And then it goes to Stimpy making a proclamation. I have to say, Stimpy with his upper lip out in normal is a funny drawing on its own, but when it is sober Stimpy and he has a human upper lip and just makes speeches, I love that drawing so much. That speech lasts so long too. I now know what I must do.
It's a great little brief moment of, again, sobriety in this insanely drunken, crazy episode. And then what I like about this episode, I forget how much it takes its time to build up to the madness of the Happy Helmet. So the scene, like the 2 minutes of Stimpy working in the lab, there's not a lot of really big jokes in there. In fact, it's mainly a lot of paintings of Stimpy, like very nicely done paintings of Stimpy.
Really takes its time. The longest is the duck and beaver section.
Yeah.
Which, I another favorite mouth movement of Stimpy's, or really anybody in RNS, is when they go and just their chin pokes out. I just love that pose. Though, am I crazy, or is this all needed to be a retake? Like the color is reversed. Stimpy's eye color is his muzzle color, and vice versa.
You're right. Yeah.
Well, that scene was all Kelly Armstrong's animation, who's another unsung hero of the show. She's just. Yeah, I think John once said she's even wilder than me. It's like she basically is the modern day like Rod Scribner or Jim Tyre or something.
Wow.
As far as this stuff goes, but she's just so amazingly talented.
And then that goes straight to Stimpy's Eureka moment. And also the shot of just the way Stimpy takes his goggles off too, just amazing. I just got all the shots.
Doesn't he blink with his like metal goggles on? They clink. He somehow makes his metal goggles blink.
Though his sweat-filled goggles disgusted me as a kid and still do now, and he drinks the sweat too.
Yes.
It's just like, ugh.
Another point we were going off earlier, I mean, that whole scene in the lab, that's Dexter's lab right there.
Yeah,
you're right. Yeah,
totally.
Especially with Stimpy like digging under his fingernail with the screwdriver. That's like the default Dexter animation.
That is the Dexter shot. It
Except
really is.
it's a screw and not a fingernail, or it's a nut and not a fingernail.
Yeah, that also, I feel like you wouldn't get that on a cartoon now because it's such an imitatable act. Like, I bet there were a lot of kids who stuck, at least tried once, like, what does this feel like? Oh, this sucks. This is not a good feeling.
This uses torture in some places. So up next, we do have the great Happy Helmet reveal.
Hey, Ren!
What?
Are you feeling any better?
No, I'm not feeling any better. Wait, what are you up to?
Oh, nothing.
What have you got behind your back? You're hiding something from me, aren't you? What is it you're hiding? All right, let's see it. Okay, hand it over.
He sticks it right on Ren's dome.
It's also beautiful. Just you feeling any better? Just the lip movements on Stimpy and Stimpy's earnestness there, and then into Ren's rolling up the paper implies a whole lot about their relationship there.
I love the head movements. Like, no, I'm not feeling any better.
Yes. And well, he is a dad here, and he is a dad getting off. Just his smooth motion of hopping off the couch and rolling up the newspaper at the same time implies that he has done this quite often, and this is just a repetitive action of Ren's.
Yeah, I think the network had problems with that. Is that right?
Yeah, they did. Yeah. There was originally some dialogue. It happens to naughty boys who do this, or something like that. They had to replace that.
Yeah, well, and then, but it's also though funny that you see that Ren multiple times in this episode goes from being a monster to a pathetic figure you almost feel sorry for if he wasn't so horrible. And especially once he gets that helmet on, he says, like, what is this, man? What are you doing? He's broken immediately. Like, what is this? Get it off.
Just having something on his head, reduces him to a weeping mess.
Yeah, he's destroyed already.
And Stimpy, this episode is, very intense. And at this point, it just becomes about torture. It's all about a well-meaning torturer.
It's that Stimpy becomes a authoritarian, as much as anyone in 1984 is. He is the same, but he's doing it so innocently you can't be mad at him.
It's almost like B.F. Skinner or something, especially whenever he hits the butt, it's really loud.
But Stimpy has no clue that this is torture.
So I do want to play the scene of Ren becoming happy. It's all visual and some of the best TV animation ever put on TV. That is redundant, I know. But the sound design is great, and John K's voice acting is great. Let's hear it all. It's about a minute long.
It's the happy helmet, Ren. Now you'll always be happy. And this is the remote control. And I use this dial to control how happy you are.
You sick little monkey! Why, I oughta... Whee!
Hey, it works!
Hey! What's happening to me? No! Got to fight it! Can't lose control! Will strong! Body weak!
Oh,
it's so great.
The sound design is so great that I can just see his monsterish grin in my head hearing it now. But it is this. He grows 80 extra teeth, and just the way he's fighting happiness so hard.
And
he
looks
so beautiful.
He looks wildly different in every cut. It's great. I was actually looking at my screenshots of this scene that I took last night and put on Twitter. I'm like, I love every drawing here, especially we don't have it, but the I must go do nice things. Every pose is so dramatically different. It's I had to watch it 8 times.
Yeah, those were John K's own drawings and Bob Jakes making them work. So,
oh god, yeah, having to animate those, especially. I was reading the story of one of the animators that you interviewed in your book, Thad, that she had to figure out how to make Ren talk while his weird smile was growing, and also him staggering around trying to fight it.
Yeah, that was Kelly.
Yeah. Oh god, beautiful animation.
Oh, and he's just so broken, and Stimpy. I just love all the cuts back to Stimpy that he's just pressing the button to make it more painful for him, but he's just so happy to do it. He's like, well, he's not happy enough, beep, and he's just so excited,
Stimpy does not have the emotional intelligence to know he's hurting Ren, and I think Ren's real issue is he doesn't know what it's like to be happy, so it's even more painful for him. He's like, what's happening?
What is this, man? Yeah, it's so, and John K is good at laughing in Ren, but clearly there came a point where he couldn't do it anymore, and it becomes Billy West laughing.
Yeah. In fact, there's one laugh that's amazing they used twice that I believe Billy West killed himself to do. It is fantastic. But I will say, for as much as we complain about John Kay, I feel like he is a great voice actor, especially in this role.
Yeah. Well, it is him. It's just Ren is John Kay, so
it's not a stretch.
Yeah, but he is so great. Actually, after watching this episode last night, I didn't watch the entirety of Stimpy's Fan Club, but just his whole the idol of millions, but he's as mortal as we. Like that entire speech is so beautiful, including it just going nowhere with him deciding, like, you're watching him decide to strangle Stimpy.
Looking at his hands with these hands.
And then the only thing that stops him is his brain is on fire, like, the pain! And it's just him screaming over the fire. In the background. Oh, God.
That's a great episode.
Yes, yeah. But
we have to gesticulate wildly while we're acting out this Ren and Stimpy stuff.
You can't see it then.
Yes, so Ren irons Stimpy's underwear. He's very happy, ironing for Stimpy. Stimpy just sort of pastes it on his body because Ren is just so manic, he's just ironing it too flat. He made it into one flat piece of fabric.
He loves it that much. And the way the top of his head kind of dances on his tongue when laughing.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, too.
That was an invention of... the animator Ron Zorman. He had to figure it out how to make that work, and he decided to have the tongue flap like a little worm too.
It's great.
Beautiful.
So I don't have all of the Happy Helmet's torture, but I do have Ren cleaning the cat box, which has the famous scream we talked about.
I must do wonderful things for my best friend, Stimpy! Oh, joy! See how I love to clean filthy cat boxes!
That is the laugh the episode ends on, and there's a point in that scene where you could tell, like, they're pitching John K. up a little bit to sort of, do those Billy West screams, but at a certain point, Billy West just takes over for the laughing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I saw in interviews Billy West says he almost, like, blew out his voice trying to match, like, the demands that they had of him, and they're risks he wish he didn't take because that could have ended his career, and just to scream to prove to John Kay that he could scream as loud as he could. Like I would take a Doug episode recording over that any day of the week.
Or a gentle Philip Fry voiceover.
Oh yes.
But again, cat litter, the cat shit, they just love that stuff in these early episodes. It was stays crunchy even in milk. That's one of my favorite things about that.
So up next we get the highlight of this episode, the most memorable part, and for a reason. So
the bed
yeah.
that Ren is in, I love it.
He's like in a child's nursery now.
The animators earnestly drew Disney characters there, and they're creepy enough on their own just to draw a character that would not look out of place in any regular Disney cartoon.
Yeah, to see like Ren just with his like fingers dug into the bed, like looking over to the window, and Stimpy pulls in.
Yeah, and he's like, this is the closest to comfort he's getting because he's like, Stimpy's not here. If I don't get out of bed, nothing will happen. And then he just doesn't want to get out of bed, and Stimpy then drives up and forces him to.
Yes. Yeah, he makes him get out of bed with the happy helmet. So this next thing,
you don't think he's somewhere being unhappy? I will make him happy again.
So this next song, it's the Happy Happy Joy Joy song, of course, and over time I learned it was a parody of Burl Ives, but I had no idea to what extent. So to explain this a little more, Ren's voice is a mix between Kirk Douglas, Burl Ives, and Peter Lorre. I believe when Billy West took over, he made it more Burl Ivesy and actually a little more like John Kay himself, like John Kay the man. It was a little less Peter Lorre, but a lot of the spoken word parts in this song are based on out of context Burl Ives quotes from music and from movies and from TV. So this starts with, here's a song about a whale, and this is the Burl Ives clip that it's based on.
Here is a song about a whale with a most amazing appetite.
No, it's a song about being happy. So we also get If and You Ain't the Mother and Father of All Liars. It's from The Big Country. And the Ren and Stimpy, it's If and You Ain't the Granddaddy of All Liars, which I prefer. But it's from the movie The Big Country, and Burl Ives is in it. We have a clip of that as well.
Well, if you ain't the mother and father of all liars.
That's all we need. And then the last clip is, so the little critters of nature, they don't know that they're ugly. That's very funny. A fly marrying a bumblebee. That's cut together from two different Burl Ives things. Disney's Summer Magic, and I believe a record he put together just called Mother Goose Songs.
The little critters of nature, they don't know that they're ugly. That's very funny. A fly marrying a bumblebee.
So yeah, that was all new to me, and thank you to whoever put together that YouTube compilation of. He found every Burl Ives reference. This flew over my head until now. Again, I knew this was based on the music of Burl Ives, and that was it. I had no idea all of these spoken word parts were taken out of context from like 6 different things.
The most shocking to me is that I told you I'd shoot, because I thought that was just a murderous non sequitur about, like, wouldn't it be funny if Burl Ives said this? But obviously he never would in something.
I told you I'd do it. I told you that you wouldn't believe me. Damn your soul! I told you!
But then to hear that it was that, I mean, I haven't seen a ton of Westerns, so I had not seen A Big Country and knew that those were all lines he said. The only thing missing from this is lines he would have said in his Big Daddy in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof.
Or as the snowman in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
As a kid, I didn't know this was Burl Ives, or at least I knew it was the snowman from Rudolph. I did not know who Burl Ives was. And they put in Burl Ives many other times, like the sun was drawn as Burl Ives for one thing.
That's right.
But I guess before we play Happy Happy Joy Joy, I did just want to say the shot of Ren on the staircase, a broken, shaking man who just wants to die but can't, and who put on his robe. He still put on a robe for no reason. He's just shaking on the stairs. Is maybe my favorite drawing in the entirety of Ren and Stimpy. I just love the sad desperation in it with a pasted on smile. It is just beautiful. It really speaks to me, and I don't know why. I love it so much. I just wanted to opine about it.
Thad, we've been talking for a very long time. We want to know what you think about Happy Happy Joy Joy. For some, it is like the defining moment of Ren and Stimpy, who really didn't do that many songs after this.
Yeah, that's true. That was probably it for me when I was a kid too. It is the defining moment because it's just all this insanity going on at one time. Which quite frankly isn't that insane. It's just them singing and jumping around, but it's just the mood that this sets. Like, Stimpy's got this, really inane song going on while Ren is being psychologically tortured, and then he's starting to finally fight it, and he knows he has to basically bash his skull off to go, for his freedom. And he's got to smile while he's doing it. So
the butt to butt animation in the dance, especially, I felt like that was used in 8 million commercials for Ren and Stimpy. That it was put in multiple Ren and Stimpy video games. Like it's just a classic Ren and Stimpy movement. And I think what makes it complete is the honestly non sequitur kiss sound effect that it's like a smooch sound when their butts hit the first time. It's so odd.
Their butts are very supple in that scene.
Yes, but I guess did we hear the whole song then?
Not the whole song. The whole song will play at some point during this podcast, but I do have the point where Ren, he's somehow able to leave the sunken place in his brain. He's somehow able to gain a spark of sentience and find a hammer to destroy the helmet with, and he is taking great joy in beating his head into the music.
I was thinking of Get Out a bit watching this too. That's true.
If then you ain't the granddaddy of all liars, the little critters of nature, they don't know that they're ugly. That's very funny. A fly marrying a bumblebee. I told you I'd shoot, but you didn't believe me. Why didn't you believe me? Happy, happy, joy, joy. Happy, happy, joy, joy. Happy, happy, joy, joy. Happy, happy, joy. Happy, happy, joy, joy. Happy, happy, joy, joy. Happy, 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 joy, joy, joy.
I love how the hammer is timed to the music and Ren stomping into the room is timed to the music.
And he knows
when I was a kid, I was watching it at my friend's house, and I think it was at the point where Ren's hopping into the kitchen that my friend's mother walked into the room and just turned around and laughed. It's like
I don't know what this is. I don't want to ask about it.
And just the way he's shaking as he opens the drawer, he's like, "Am I?"
Just like rifling in the drawer, like just grabbing around.
He knows that Stimpy is finally distracted enough that he can get to a way to get this helmet off of himself, and you as a viewer, you're waiting this long too, of just like, how angry Ren gets, that if he ever gets free of this thing, you're going to see the most angry he's ever been in the entire show. That's going to reward you.
Yes, I was thinking the exact same thing. Like, you have seen Ren and Stimpy, you've seen those 5 episodes 30 times by now, and you're like, I'm going to get a Ren freak out and some awesome violence, and they subvert that, but it's still entertaining. It's just like, when's he going to break? When's he going to break? And then he's just like, oh, this is great. Let's play the clip of the resolution.
Ren, you're angry?
You darn tootin'! I'm angry! I have never been this angry in my entire life! Hey! I feel great! I love being angry! Thank you, Stimpy.
Happy to be of service?
My favorite drawing is Ren, like, wiggling furiously. That's actually my Windows login avatar. Just Ren, like, his eyes are bugging out. His entire body is wiggling because he just is, like, boiling angry. But yeah, the voice acting is great. The animation is great. I just love every part of this entire, like, sort of faux breakdown he's about to have.
I love hearing the sounds of, like, glass breaking underneath him too. When he's and also anytime he chokes Stimpy is great, because Stimpy is a potato. Like, he doesn't have a neck.
That's true. They couldn't hang him.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's great because, again, the music choices are really good too. So the music when Ren freaks out is good. Then it lapses back into what I call the Velveeta song, because I don't know the actual name.
I think of Camp Granada, but that's because we're about to do a podcast with that song in it too.
That's right, but it's like, okay, now the status quo is restored. Things are back to quote unquote normal in the house.
And then Ren has discovered what makes him happy is being angry.
Yes,
and that's the secret.
It's a great contradiction. Any final thoughts on this? That we talked a lot about it. You wrote the book on Ren and Stimpy, so I'm sure you've got a little bit more to say.
Stimpy's invention is just one of those defining moments in animation history where it shows what could be done with the medium. I just think, it's perfect. I mean, John Kay did take it into his office and it took a full year, but it did come out perfect. So, and it made a lot of people think there might be a method to his madness, but it just sort of lucked out because of the people he had surrounding him at the time. You could just imagine if, just one example, if Bob Jakes didn't go over and help salvage the episode, if it had all the, the mistakes that literally litter the first season. I mean, watch some of the earlier episodes and see how ropey it gets.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if he hadn't flown to Korea to make sure and retrain the Philippines.
Yeah. I feel like you're totally right, and I think this, not even just Ren and Stimpy, but this cartoon made cartoons better because other animators and other artists could point to this, like, they got away with this and it was hugely successful because of that. They were able to do retakes and we should be able to do retakes. Like, I think this kind of proved, like, spend a lot of money, maybe not this much money on a cartoon, and people will respond. Like, the quality will actually make people respond more than just putting out anything.
And it gave people permission to, like, say, well, they were this off model or they were this indulgent with violence, so they did all these things and people love this, so couldn't I? Yeah, and it sort of gave them, a bit of license in the second season. It's like, well, we proved you wrong with Stimpy's invention, so you should let us do whatever we want. So, and that sort of became its strengths became the series' downfall, actually. So, unfortunately, that's sad. But this almost sounds like the peak of Ren and Stimpy was right here, the closest to making it work, and that's that all it needed was 18 months on one episode and lots of money. Yeah, that's the tragedy of it. It's just, and that's what the actual later episodes actually got more expensive, but that's because everybody was getting scale and what they deserved. But that's another story. Yeah. So, how dare they? Exactly.
But yeah, it's I don't think there's moments in the second season that sort of reach this height. Maybe Sven Hoek and
oh, for sure.
That's the other one. There's got to be another one. Man's Best Friend, which really is terrific, despite its role in the downfall of the show. But
the That's What I'm Gonna Do speech in Sven is almost it's almost an inversion of our speeches in this, because it is very subtle acting, but just still beautiful subtle acting on Ren being angry instead of extreme takes. But I just love the way his head rolls back and forth as he's talking about how angry he is.
He's so angry he can't even express it. It's just like all inside. It's great. I love Sven Hoek. So we'll definitely have you back, Thad, for some future cartoon podcasts. We'll do our plugs off the air so we can save you some time. So where can we find you? I know you're very busy. What are you working on now? And of course, please plug your book.
Yeah, most of my time these days, I'm a film restoration artist. Just making old films look better for Blu-ray and theatrical release. Working on the Laurel and Hardy shorts right now. A couple of different things for Kino Lorber. Awesome. Some of them I can't discuss, but they just put out the couple of W.C. Fields silents that I worked on, and 3D Film Archive. We just finished The Maze, which is great little horror. If you like classic horror, you'll love that. That's basically my full-time job. I also do some comic book translation for IDW's Disney Comics line. All those stories with Donald, Mickey, and Scrooge. And my blog is whataboutthad.com. I almost never update it. You can go there for different controversial opinions or different write-ups about cartoon history. And finally, my book, Sick Little Monkeys, the unauthorized Ren and Stimpy story. You can find that on Amazon. Make sure you're buying the revised edition. You'll know it with the beautiful cover that I had done by Stephen DeStefano and Bill Ray from definitely two of the best artists on this show. And maybe there'll be an audiobook at some point. I don't know. It's been in production for a while, but we're John K-ing it, I guess. So it'll come out eventually.
You're not yelling at enough people to make it happen faster. But
I know.
I have to say, for my fourth reading of your book, I will read the revised edition. But you did an amazing, I forget where it was, and I want to find it again. You did an amazing interview, I believe, with Bob Camp and somebody else, maybe about a year or two
ago.
Bill
Ray.
Oh, Bill Ray. Where was that published? I really want to read that again.
That is on Animation Scoop, Jerry Beck's website. Just Google Bob Camp, Bill Ray, Thad, or whatever, and you'll find the interview. That was it's funny because there was at least one or two historians in the audience who I heard, they didn't say it directly to me, but they said, "Oh, that was probably the best panel or interview I'd ever been at in like 40 years of these things."
Yeah, the interview was fantastic. That's why I wanted to find it again now that we're on the topic. But thanks so much for joining us, Thad. We'll definitely have you back for some more classic stuff. But
yeah. Or any other Ren and Stimpy's or any other Warner cartoons. Be happy to do it. Just find a time.
I do want to revisit like a games episode and explore that maybe in the future.
Sure.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, take it easy, man. Thanks once again to Thad for joining us. Once again, I cannot say buy his book enough. You probably heard me say it on like 1,000 podcasts, but if you're listening to this Ren and Stimpy podcast and you're like, oh, I remember Ren and Stimpy and I want to learn more about it, his book is great, and it's also a very, very fun read, and lots of stories about a very angry person in there that make things fun.
It's very illuminating. Like I said at the beginning with that, I really love the I think it's very fair to John Kay. I think he compliments John Kay for what he did, because he is a singular artist, but also is honest about what everybody else who had to work around him had to deal with. So it's an important historical piece. And I think, Bob, you've said it many times before, but the output of John Kay post Spumco is really all the proof you need of who who did what on those Ren and Stimpy episodes.
Yeah, I mean, this is a different podcast, but just look at all the things he didn't finish and look at how many of those things were bad, which is all of them. I mean, there's got to be maybe one Ripping Friends fan in our audience, and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But, hate to break it to you, kid, but it was no good. But thanks for joining us for What a Cartoon. I have been one of your hosts, Bob Mack. You can find me on Twitter as Bob Servo. My other podcast is Retronauts. Go to retronauts.com or look for Retronauts in your podcast machine. It is a classic gaming podcast every Monday and occasionally on Friday. We have a new episode all about a classic gaming topic. I recommend, just digging into the archives, finding an episode or a topic you like, and listening to that episode, and I think you'll enjoy it. Also, so this podcast is brought to you by our amazing patrons on the Talking Simpsons Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons for $5 a month, you'll get all of these episodes ad-free and in a week in advance, along with Talking Simpsons ad-free in a week in advance, and also, like, 80 other bonus podcasts. Like, we've done interviews with people like Mike Scully and Bill Oakley and Dan Graney.
Ian Jones-Quartey as well, the creator of OKKO and former co-executive producer on Steven Universe.
And also our season wrap-ups for Talking Simpson, and also our discussion of deleted scenes for every season starting at 5. There's just so much going on there, and it all starts at $5 a month. $10 a month, there's a video every month. So yes, we've had a great outpouring of support recently, and that's how we're doing all of these new shows, and we thank you so much. We're so busy, but we love it. Henry, anything else?
No, that's about it. I mean, you can follow me on Twitter at HENEREYG. That's where I also update about the show and tease some upcoming episodes as well. And this first, 4 episodes of What a Cartoon has been tons of fun. I appreciate all the great response to it. And yeah, just that $5 a month, it goes to Bob and me doing this full time, chasing down interviews. We've had some really cool interviews coming up. There's tons of other people I want to talk to. This show opens up so many guests outside of the world of The Simpsons to us as well, which I really love. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to doing tons of cool stuff. And I, again, want to thank everybody who supports us at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. Oh, and one last thing. Look, if you can't support us there, one free thing you can do that would really help us is reviews on iTunes. That still is very important. We're a new show on iTunes. So on the free feed for this, if you could just if you gave us a 5-star review and just said, this is a great show, that would really help us out.
Thanks so much for listening, folks. We'll see you next week for anime. We're watching Kill la Kill episode 1, and we'll talk about that later. Bye-bye.
Ever tried reading while jogging, cooking, or even juggling flaming torches? Yeah, it doesn't end well. But with audiobooks.com, you can conquer books without the circus act. Dive into over 450,000 titles, including more than 10,000 free ones. Get hooked on a bestseller, find your next obsession, or finally read that classic you've been avoiding since high school. And here's the inside scoop. Sign up today for a free 30-day trial and snag your first 3 audiobooks on the house. Sign up for your free trial at audiobooks.com/podcastfree today. That's audiobooks.com/podcastfree.